Breaking news just moments ago, President Trump has signed the proclamation that allows National Guards to be deployed. And under the terms of that proclamation, that could happen as early as tonight at the southern border. And it is on the basis of the request of the governors along those borders. So we will keep you posted as that movement gets underway. Also tonight, a big development in the Russia probe as news breaks that the president is not the target of a criminal investigation. Sources telling Fox News that Robert Mueller told President Trump's attorneys that he will issue a report on the president's actions and that obstruction is still in the scope. Trace Gallagher live in our West Coast newsroom to explain the story tonight. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Martha, we now know that President Trump is a subject of the special counsel probe, the definition of subject being that the president is under investigation, but there is not sufficient evidence to bring charges. The Washington Post is reporting that Robert Mueller's description of the president's status has, quote, sparked friction within Trump's inner circle between those who believe that Trump's risk of criminal jeopardy is low and those who think that subjects can become targets and that Mueller is baiting Trump into an interview that could land him in legal trouble. Here's Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz weighing both sides. Watch.
I would say it's good news for the president, but I would say that he has to be very cautious because targets sometimes evolve from subjects, particularly if they testify, and they testify in a way that the prosecution thinks is false.
Other legal experts think we're missing the point here and that the real news is that Robert Mueller is planning to write a report. Remember, unlike an independent counsel, special counsel works for the Department of Justice and is required to report conclusions confidentially to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. It's then up to the Deputy AG to decide whether to release the report publicly. Harvard Law professor Lawrence Tribe writes, quote, "The key isn't that Trump is not yet a target, but that he is a subject of Mueller's investigation and that Mueller will write a report on what Trump did, why, and what it adds up to. That is huge." Unless, of course, it's not huge, because as if it appears now the special counsel has little evidence of collusion, Robert Mueller would then work to understand whether the president intended to obstruct the Russia investigation. And if the answer there is no, then Democrats and mainstream media outlets who had collusion as plan A and obstruction as plan B would need a quick pivot to plan C. Martha.
Very interesting. Trace, thank you very much. So despite these reports, many are having a hard time wrapping their head around the idea that perhaps the president may not be indicted by Robert Mueller. In a new piece, constitutional law attorney and George Washington University law professor writes, when will the media accept that Trump is not a criminal target? Professor Turley joins me now. Good to see you tonight, Professor Turley. So you've been saying all along that you think that the interpretation of this by many in the media has been far too broad and too, sort of amped up.
It has. We went through a long period where people talked about collusion as if there was some federal crime called collusion. And then that morphed into obstruction. And then it morphed into things like, campaign finance violations or other issues. All these crimes have elements. They have case precedent. You have to satisfy those. And where you and I have talked that there are areas that should be of a great concern for President Trump, these crimes have not strengthened over time. When before Comey was fired, he told Trump that he was not a target of that investigation.
That's right.
It appears that nothing has changed after over a year. That's a significant fact to reveal. Yeah.
Do you think that, I thought it was very interesting what Alan Dershowitz said, that this is sort of an attempt to lure the president into a sit-down by saying, don't worry, you're not a target of a criminal investigation. We are going to write a report, and there is still a question of obstruction of justice. And what do you recommend to the president?
Well, I think it may be difficult for the president to avoid a sit-down. There is a history of presidents yielding when there's such a great public demand for information. I think that he could thread this needle. Besides the fact that we haven't seen any direct nexus in any of the past indictments to either Trump, and really very little related to the campaign, Mueller has given 4 categories to the White House that should be good news. These are areas where the president has very strong defenses to make, in my view, probably insurmountable defenses unless he's got some new evidence to present. So could he thread that needle? Yes. Is it a dangerous process? Yes. Yeah. So he just needs to listen to his counsel.
Well, you talk about how, the media might be shocked to learn, sort of the reality of where this is legally at this point. I think that Tom Friedman will have to put himself down as shocked because he is calling for, he says President Obama and President Bush are waiting in the wings for the constitutional crisis so that they can come in and save the country as soon as that gets underway. Watch this.
Barack Obama and George W. Bush have both been staying out of the political fray, despite all the attacks on them from Trump, is because they understand they are going to have to come together in the face of this constitutional crisis that's in our future and stand up for the Constitution. It's going to have to be done in a bipartisan way by two ex-presidents, I think, who still have a lot of credibility. And my guess is they are saving their powder for that.
There's a panic coming, and two former presidents will sweep in to fix it, Jonathan.
Must be awkward when people are planning your wake. But, I find that rather odd. I have a lot of respect for both these presidents and the level of restraint that they have shown. I think it's presidential. But if they're waiting for a constitutional crisis, there's very few objective signs that that's going to come to pass. If anything, the criminal case against President Trump has weakened over time. Now, could there be a false statement made in the interview? Could there be additional evidence? Yes, but I think we have to deal with this objectively and to say that he is still just a subject after over a year, hundreds of thousands of documents, a myriad of cooperating witnesses, and his status has not changed. And the problem is that very few people can get themselves to say that there isn't a clear-cut criminal case against the president.
The whole thing kind of reminds me, and we'll talk about it more next time, when you talk about issuing this report, you have to wonder if it could be verbal. And you think about James Comey standing up there basically and issuing a report on Hillary Clinton, but not finding her guilty of anything, but, going through a litany of things with regard to her behavior. And I just wonder if we're going to see, a similar moment when all of this wraps up. We will see.